Hi, it's Katrina. Imagine a pyramid twice the size of Egypt's Great Pyramid hidden in plain sight for centuries, or ancient seafarers building advanced boats 40,000 years ago, navigating oceans while Neanderthals still existed. These are the bombshell discoveries rewriting history that makes us ask, what else have we missed? In today's video, we'll explore what else we have been wrong about. Are we on the verge of a new era of historical revelation? Let's find out. The biggest pyramid on the planet. Ancient disappearances, hidden tunnels, and a church plopped on top of it all. This pyramid's got more drama than your favorite reality show. You would think the largest pyramid in the world would be obvious, right? But not exactly. The largest pyramid on the planet is so dang big that for centuries, people mistook it for a mountain. And by now, I'm sure you've guessed I'm not talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramid I'm talking about is twice its size, twice as humongous as the biggest pyramid in Egypt, and people walked on it for hundreds of years thinking it was just another scenic overlook. Brutal. At 216 feet tall, the Cholula Pyramid might not be the tallest. The Giza Pyramid is indeed the tallest pyramid ever made, but it takes the crown for sheer size. Mexico's Cholula Pyramid has a whopping 157 million cubic feet of volume. Despite all the effort that went into building it, the ancient Cholulans ghosted it in the end. A few hundred years after it was completed, they abandoned the place. Then nature took over, and after a few centuries, people just assumed it was a hill. By the time Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 1500s, the pyramid was so covered in vegetation and jungle that they built a church right on top of it. They put their spiritual, historical landmark on something that was already a sacred landmark. The Spanish must have had their suspicions. If not, why wouldn't they put their church somewhere else? Classic colonialism. Unlike Giza, which was constructed in one grand effort, Cholula's pyramid was a work in progress for about 1,000 years. Construction started around 200 BC when the base was hardly big enough to do a jig on. But as Cholula grew into a bustling city of 100,000 people, the pyramid kept expanding, going through 4 major construction phases and 9 modifications. By the time the final touches were added, the pyramid was huge, beautifully decorated, and a serious workout to climb. Since the city was dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of Mesoamerica, the pyramid served both as a temple and a burial site. Over 150 years of excavations have uncovered hundreds of skeletons, some from human sacrifices. Somewhere around 900 AD, things got weird. Cholula's population plummeted, and the once busy pyramid became an ancient ghost town. The mystery continues today because no one knows exactly why Cholula collapsed. Was it war, climate change, disease? Either way, everyone left and the jungle took over. Hernan Cortés and his Spanish troops arrived in 1519. What did they do? Massacred thousands of people in one of the bloodiest slaughters of the conquest, and then built a church. The church was plopped right on top of the pyramid where it still stands today, looking picturesque and unintentionally ironic. In the 19th century, archaeologists finally started wondering about the hill. American archaeologist Adolphe Bandelier kicked off the first serious study in 1881. He dug into the soil until he uncovered the outer shell of the pyramid. He found murals and skulls. By the 1930s, a team of researchers had carved 5 miles of tunnels into the pyramid, mapping out its true scale. And while archaeologists have learned a lot, much of the pyramid is still unexcavated. More excavations can't be done because the Spanish church on top is a protected historical site. We've got to get LiDAR up in here. A seafaring civilization from the Stone Age? Hold on to your life vest. The history of seafaring as we know it is about to change. A new discovery has proven that human beings were navigating the oceans in seafaring vessels when Neanderthals were still alive. That's right, you heard me right. 40,000 years ago, ancient peoples of the Philippines were way ahead of their time, building sophisticated boats and mastering seafaring skills. They were doing it thousands of years before famous explorers like Magellan or Zheng He ever set sail. I can't express enough how early these seafarers were getting their sea legs. 40,000 years ago, according to mainstream science, humans in Africa and Europe were still figuring out how to make fire. Mammoths roamed North America. Neanderthals were about to go extinct. The world was primordial. But in Southeast Asia, people were building boats and sailing the seven seas. How is this even possible? Surely archaeologists are mistaken, right? In a mind blowing new paper published in the Journal of Archaeological Science, researchers Richard Fuentes and Alfred Pollock from Ateneo de Manila University had a lot to say. They pointed out that even though Southeast Asia was not connected to mainland Asia, people still traveled between the two places. Unless they were teleporting, they must have been sailing. Fuentes and Pollock cited the discovery of 40,000-year-old tools in their research. These tools, simple stone instruments, show signs of plant processing. They appear to have been used for making ropes, nets, and other boat-related stuff. These primitive ships could have been used to transport people between places like the Philippines, Indonesia, and Timor-Leste. Researchers also uncovered the remains of deep ocean fish like tuna and sharks, and they found fishing hooks. I don't know about you, but most people don't reel in sharks while fishing from the shore. These mysterious ancient people were clearly using boats that could handle the roughness of the open sea, and they seem to have been harpooning sharks. This changes everything about human history. It means people could have been sailing from Asia to America during caveman times. At least some people could have. Scientists wonder why it was the Philippines specifically where ancient boaters built highly advanced vessels using composite materials. Why did they have knowledge of the sea while others didn't? As for what those boats were made of, let's not get too futuristic. Scientists think the boats were made primarily from plant fibers. They also had incredible rope technology. They would have needed a lot of strong ropes for fishing and seafaring. No ropes, no adventure. It's as simple as that. Fuentes and Pollock teamed up with naval architects from the University of Cebu to test their hypothesis. They launched the first long-distance open-sea watercrafts project, which is, hands down, one of the coolest archaeological projects to date. They are testing scaled-down models of ancient boats to make sure they were seaworthy. Then, hopefully, they'll put these boats to the test and see just how robust 40,000-year-old watercrafts can be. Would you trust a boat built by cave people to bring you across the ocean? Talk about putting your research to the test. The next time you're on a beach in the Philippines, just think you are standing in the birthplace of some of the earliest and most advanced seafaring tech in history. Pretty impressive, huh? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big thank you to Montana G Mama and Jonathan Bonilla for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about discoveries that could change history. There are a lot. The most important lost suitcase in history. If you are looking for lost historical artifacts, check under your bed. No, I'm serious. Check. A suitcase believed to have belonged to the man who discovered King Tut's tomb has just been found under a bed. Forget hidden vaults and museum archives. All you need to unearth history is a good spring cleaning. The suitcase in question once belonged to Howard Carter, the legendary Egyptologist who led the 1922 excavation of King Tut's tomb, one of the most mind-blowing archaeological discoveries ever made. According to antiques expert David Harper, the suitcase ended up with Carter's colleague John Healy in the 1930s. When Healy passed away in the 1970s, his son apparently did what many of us do and handed something old and mysterious. He shoved it under a bed and forgot about it. Half a century later, and voila, a piece of history covered in dust bunnies. Harper, who was approached by Healy's son to sell the case, described the discovery as mind-boggling, which is British for holy cow, this is amazing. According to him, this wasn't just any suitcase. It likely carried important documents and even artifacts from King Tut's tomb. But there's one small issue: Tutankhamun's legendary curse. If you're unfamiliar with the mummy's curse, may I suggest you watching The Mummy? You'll thank me later. But seriously, the curse of King Tut is a terrifying thing. It's said that those who disturb the pharaoh's tomb will suffer mysterious misfortunes. Harper, acutely aware of the curse, admitted that he drove carefully to the auction house while transporting the suitcase in his car. He was scared that the mummy's grudge might get him into a car accident. The suitcase went up for auction in February with an estimated price tag of only around £1,500. Honestly, that's a steal. How much do you think it actually sold for? Go ahead, take a guess. How much would you be willing to pay? Not surprisingly, at least not to me anyway, it sold for £12,000. After all, it wasn't just an old suitcase. It's a physical connection to Howard Carter, King Tut, the glory, the intrigue, the glamour, plus it has Howard Carter's initials on it. The Great Wall of China is older than we thought. Looks like we need to edit the history books again. The Great Wall of China just got a little bit older, actually a lot older. A new discovery in China's Shandong province has pushed back the origins of the Great Wall by 300 years. The find includes walls dating back to China's spring and autumn period of 770 to 476 BC. It was the same era in which our philosophical friend Confucius was out dropping wisdom bombs about life. And if that's not old enough for you, some sections might even be from the Western Zhou dynasty of 1046 to 771 BC. Archaeologists may have just uncovered the Great Wall's great-great-great-grandparent. Do you remember off the top of your head how long the Great Wall is? I'll give you a hint. It's longer than you think. 5,000 miles? Try again. 10,000 miles? Not quite. Try 13,000 miles, stretching across China like a stone belt. The wall was built to keep out invaders, but here's what most people don't realize. It wasn't one continuous wall at first. Different Chinese kingdoms threw up their own barriers over a period of about 2,000 years. It was like a group project where no one consulted each other, but somehow it all worked out in the end. This new old section is part of the Qi Wall, one of the earliest and longest ancient Chinese walls. It was built by the small yet mighty state of Qi and played a crucial role in military strategy, helping Qi fend off invaders and flex its power. Archaeologists from the Shandong Provincial Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology spent months digging up the area in 2023. What they found was that the first walls were about 33 feet thick. That's as thick as the walls of a castle keep. Not a bad start. After the initial building stage, things got serious. As China's small states started duking it out for power, the walls got bigger, stronger, and up to 98 feet wide. I guess if you're in a war, you don't want to be the guy with the flimsy fence. Under King Xuan of Qi in the 4th century BC, construction techniques reached pro levels. The best preserved walls from this period were made with fine yellow earth compacted by metal rammers. Now here's something that most people don't know. The Great Wall of China isn't just a wall, it was also home to settlements. Excavations uncovered ancient homes, trenches, and city gates. Archaeologists even discovered the ruins of Pinyin City, a major Qi stronghold about a mile north of the wall. Historical texts described Pinyin as a crucial defensive hub, and now, thanks to this dig, scientists know those texts weren't just ancient propaganda. Archaeologists went digging for info on a wall and found an entire lost city. That's pretty amazing. Most tourists today visit the Ming Dynasty sections of the Great Wall, which were built with fancy bricks between 1368 and 1644 AD. The really old parts of the wall are 2,000 years older than the Ming Dynasty, but they aren't tourist hotspots. You may also like to know that originally it wasn't just about stopping invasions. The Great Wall helped China control trade by acting as a giant border checkpoint for merchants on the Silk Road. Imagine trying to sneak past customs when the customs officers have a 30-foot tall wall backing them up. Not happening. Now who's up for a 13,000-mile hike to explore the entire wall? Cave pearls and ancient artifacts. You know what archaeology is missing? Kinder Surprise-style eggs. Well, not anymore. In an underground tunnel in Jerusalem, researchers have just discovered 50 rare cave pearls, and some of them contain actual ancient artifacts inside. It's like nature decided to wrap up history in a mineral shell. It's a real-world surprise egg. Let me clarify one thing, though. Cave pearls are not actual pearls. They are a type of mineral formation in caves like stalactites and stalagmites. These little guys form in shallow pools of water saturated with calcite, rolling around like tiny rock marbles until they develop their signature smooth spherical shape. Most cave pearls are pretty small, even smaller than natural pearls. What makes the ones found in Israel particularly special is that they are huge, because some of them formed around ancient relics rather than dirt particles. 14 of the 50 pearls had formed around pottery shards, including fragments of ceramic oil lamps. 2 even had pieces of ancient plaster as their nucleus. This find happened completely by accident. In 2017, a team of researchers were investigating the spring tunnel in the Jerusalem hills. They found a previously sealed segment of the tunnel and stumbled upon 50 cave pearls mixed with debris. Would you rather have a pretty pearl necklace or giant cave pearls with bits of ancient objects inside them? The team ran tests to date the pearls and their artifact cores, because when you find ancient rock eggs, you gotta know what's inside, right? What they uncovered was a timeline stretching across multiple historical periods. Most pottery shards date to the Hellenistic period of 333 to 63 BC. Some are from Roman times, some are even older, going back to the days of Babylonia in the 6th century BC. One particular pottery piece could be from the Iron Age, meaning it could be over 2,600 years old. Let's just take a second to appreciate the mix of Mother Nature and forgotten civilizations. These pearls have been slowly forming around artifacts for thousands of years. Aside from being one of the coolest accidental discoveries in recent memory, this find confirms that this tunnel has been in use for a very, very long time. Previous evidence already suggests that it was built around the 8th century BC, possibly as part of a royal mansion's water system. You never know what you're going to find stuck in the core of an ancient rock. A rare helmet and a strange ritual. If you thought Denmark was just about Vikings, Lego, and ridiculously good pastries, think again. Archaeologists have just unearthed a 1,600-year-old stash of weapons, including one exceptionally rare Roman artifact. This might just be one of the coolest discoveries in Scandinavian history. Found at Løsning Sondermark, this epic collection includes around 100 weapons, chainmail, and armor fragments, all buried in what appears to be a ritual offering. This isn't just some ancient lost and found pile or the contents of your junk drawer. This cache was deliberately placed in the ground for reasons still unknown. When researchers first dug up 2 small rusted iron plates, they weren't sure what they had on their hands. But thanks to X-ray imaging, they realized these weren't just random scraps of metal, they were part of a Roman-era helmet. And not just any helmet, this is the only Roman helmet ever found in Denmark, making it a truly one-of-a-kind discovery. Dating to the 4th century AD, these metal fragments once protected the cheek and neck of a Roman soldier. It's hard to believe this helmet, which looks like a hunk of junk, protected a skilled Roman warrior in ancient times, but it did. And there's more. The excavation also uncovered spearheads, swords, lances, and chainmail, the kind of gear that would have made any ancient warrior feel very confident in battle. Plus, 2 bronze neck rings, which were likely personal bling belonging to a chieftain. So, what's the deal with the treasure? Did some ancient Scandinavian warriors decide to Marie Kondo their weapon stash? The placement of these weapons suggests they weren't just leftovers from a battlefield. Archaeologists think they were buried during post-battle ceremonies or sacrificial rituals, likely connected to a chieftain. But to be quite honest, it's all just speculation. Scientists don't know who the weapons belonged to, whether they were spoils of war, or if they were taken from a rogue group of Romans deep in enemy territory. Partying in prehistoric Brazil. Brazil is party central, and it has been for more than 2,300 years. No phones, no loudspeakers, no carnival, and still the ancient Brazilians threw some of the wildest, most unforgettable parties you could imagine. Who needs Coachella when you've got a lagoon full of fish, some good fermented beverages, and earthen mounds where you can dance like no one's watching? That's exactly what researchers found out when they dug into pottery shards from a pre-colonial fiesta in the Patos Lagoon. Scientists from the University of York did some serious digging. They uncovered pottery fragments dating to between 2,300 and 1,200 years ago. But it wasn't the pottery itself that intrigued them. It was the evidence of massive parties that piqued researchers' interest. Where the pottery was found, huge amounts of food were devoured, many drinks were drunk, and the only thing that probably wasn't happening was people checking their social media for party pics. Pottery and partying was uncovered within earthen mounds known as cerritos, which sounds kind of like a VIP lounge for ancient shamans. These mounds were built by the Charrua and Nuano indigenous groups, and they were way more than just a pile of dirt. Cerritos were symbolic, used for burials, territory marking, and as the spot to gather when the fish were swimming. When it was fishing season, it was also party season. These mounds were in use for over 3,000 years. That's a lot of partying. Dr. Admiral, lead author of the study and cultural detective extraordinaire, said that while some scholars thought the mounds were for permanent settlements, that's probably not the case. Dr. Admiral believes the mounds were specifically for big gatherings each migration season. Scientists didn't just look at the pottery and call it a day. That's boring. They analyzed it. Pottery analysis revealed some of the earliest evidence of fermented drinks anywhere in the world. Forget about your local craft IPAs that cost an arm and a leg. These ancient jungle dwellers in Brazil were whipping up drinks from tubers, sweet corn, and palm. It was the original homemade moonshine. As for the why behind these epic parties, it all really does come down to fish. This study also found traces of fish processing. The ancient Brazilians were putting together the original fish fry feast with some killer drinks on the side. They weren't just partying, they were taking part in elaborate social customs that brought everyone together, probably to celebrate that sweet seasonal catch of white-mouthed croakers. Dr. Admiral pointed out that across the globe, ancient cultures were known to throw festivals when food was abundant. Since the dawn of humanity, people have been mixing fun, food, and booze. Does your family party hard like the ancient jungle tribes of Brazil? Bodies clog the Thames. The River Thames in England has some very dark secrets. It turns out the Thames isn't just a scenic river where tourists snap photos of Big Ben. For thousands of years, it's been a watery graveyard. The River Thames is London's oldest and creepiest skeleton storage unit. Over the past 2 centuries, archaeologists have been pulling human bones from the riverbed at an alarming rate. And no, I'm not just talking about the occasional accident or an unlucky medieval peasant who slipped off a bridge. Some of these skeletal remains are ancient, dating back before London even existed. The Thames has been holding onto some serious skeletons in its closet, or rather its murky depths. A new study has just confirmed that many of these skeletal remains come from the Bronze Age, from 2500 to 800 BC. But there are also some from the Iron Age, 800 BC to 43 AD. In fact, some of these bones may be as old as 4000 BC, which means they predate everything in London except maybe bad weather. Okay, so the bodies are old, but what the heck are they doing in the river at all? Archaeologists from the Natural History Museum and Historic England have been playing detective, trying to figure out how these ancient bodies ended up in the river. You might think the obvious answer is that London has always been next to the Thames, so people just fell in. But that's not correct. Surprisingly, most of the bones weren't found near London at all. Instead, they were discovered upstream, closer to the river's source in Gloucestershire. I'm not quite sure how to say that. Anywho, that means these people weren't just unlucky city dwellers who misjudged the edge of a dock. Something darker and more mysterious was going on. One popular theory is that these skeletons came from a battle between the Celts and the Romans around 2,000 years ago. You have to picture a full-scale war ending with warriors tumbling into the river in massive numbers, Braveheart style. However, the evidence just doesn't add up. The skeletons come from different time periods, meaning they aren't just debris from one epic battle. Perhaps the answer lies in ritual. One theory gaining traction is that ancient people deliberately placed bodies in the Thames as part of religious or spiritual rituals. Let's face it, if you were living in prehistoric England, you might get really into elaborate burial customs. They didn't have much else going on. It was either that or work on Stonehenge. Dr. Rebecca Arthur, one of the lead researchers, suggested that the Thames might have been considered a sacred place, a prime location for rituals involving the dead. And it's not just an English thing. Other sites in northwestern Europe have shown similar patterns, with ancient remains found in rivers, bogs, and lakes. Chris Newsell, a bioarchaeologist from the University of Bordeaux, has a different idea. Chris said that people have been fighting over the Thames for centuries. The river provided water, transportation, and a place to wash your prehistoric laundry. People definitely waged war over access to it. Battles along its riverbanks could have resulted in bodies being dumped in the water, or even left behind to be slowly claimed by the tide. In any case, this river has seen a lot. What are your thoughts? Do you think these people were killed in battle, sacrificed, or just really bad at swimming? How many bones are still buried in England's Great River? The tomb of the pharaoh. I can't believe the news that's been coming out of Egypt lately. The greatest find in 100 years has just been made and everyone is freaking out. This is the greatest thing to happen since King Tut's tomb was opened. Here's the scoop. Archaeologists just uncovered the first royal tomb in Egypt since 1922. Most people don't realize that King Tut was the last pharaoh found in the Valley of the Kings. Ever since Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb, there hasn't been another one found. Not in all of Egypt. We've gone 100 years without a royal unboxing. But now, history is being made. The newly found tomb belongs to none other than King Thutmose II, who reigned 3,500 years ago. Dr. Mohammed Ismail Khaled, the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, said scientists uncovered vessels with inscriptions that made it clear Thutmose II was in the house, or in this case, in the tomb. The inscription also identified his wife, legendary female pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut. But guess what? No bodies. The tomb was empty because King Thutmose's corpse was found ages ago, in the 1800s. No, he didn't rise from the dead and crawl from his tomb. Egyptologists believe his mummy was moved after his tomb got looted several thousand years ago. Sadly, the thieves didn't leave much inside. Within the tomb, archaeologists found a floor covered in white plaster, remnants of painted yellow stars, and traces of text from the legendary Ilmuiduat. This was the Book of Death that was written in most kingly tombs, its words scrawled on the walls like spells. Thutmose II quelled uprisings in Nubia and led armies to handle rebels in the Levant, but history doesn't remember much about him. He was the fourth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty and ruled from 1493 to 1479 BC, and he was dead by 30. Unlike King Tut's tomb, which was packed with over 5,000 artifacts, Thutmose II's tomb wasn't overflowing with treasure, but experts did find some funerary furniture. Even in the afterlife, you gotta sit somewhere. The ancient tomb raiders didn't think the chair was valuable enough to steal, but at least it's something left for us. Sadly, the grave robbers got away with every sparkly bit of treasure, but the investigation isn't over yet. I've heard rumors that a secondary royal tomb is in the midst of being unearthed. I'll make sure to update you on its discovery when I know more. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Creepy Maya figurines. Did the Maya have action figures? Yep, and they weren't just for playtime. These Maya figurines have removable parts, like ancient Lego figures, and they are over 1,400 years old. Think about that. These little guys were around before your great. You get the idea. And some people think they might be depictions of extraterrestrials. The Maya were experts in so many things, and yet they left us with a big old mystery. Why did they abandon their grand cities around 1,000 years ago? It's like they had a huge party and then poof, everyone went home. Archaeologists today are left searching through the ruins, scratching their heads. What happened? Let's zoom in on El Peru, sitting by the San Pedro River in northern Guatemala. It was thriving like a Maya version of New York, right up until it wasn't. Oil prospectors stumbled upon it in the 60s, and archaeologists were like, jackpot. Imagine this, a royal tomb, and inside 23 ceramic figurines arranged in a circle. It's like they were having their own secret meeting, a Toy Story moment, before Toy Story was even a twinkle in Pixar's eye. We've got a possible king, royal court members, a warrior queen with a shield, and a shaman with a face twisted in a howl. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some of these figurines have removable helmets. Scientists say they are boxing helmets for ritual fights. But let's be honest, they look suspiciously like space helmets. And the star of the show, a dwarf figurine wearing a deer helmet, blowing a conch shell trumpet. Not just any trumpet. This was used to open portals to the underworld. David Friedel, a Maya expert, explains these figurines were part of a ceremony for the king's journey to the afterlife. It's a symbolic reenactment of court rituals. Of course, ancient alien enthusiasts have jumped in, and they are asking, are the figurines depictions of a Maya ritual or effigies of alien visitors in weird spacesuits? Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Humans of the Coast. Archaeologists are changing history in Canada. On the central coast of British Columbia, the Aboriginal group Heiltsuk Nation tells a story passed down from their ancestors of a land that never froze during the Ice Age. It was a coastal strip of paradise where early migrants to North America lived in peace and harmony. For years, it's been nothing but a story. But now, researchers have begun to uncover evidence of human presence in coastal BC from 14,000 years ago. Experts recently completed an excavation on Triquet Island, where they found a settlement from the Ice Age. This was a time when most of North America was covered under thick sheets of glacial ice. Yet here, on this remote island, human beings were thriving. Archaeologists found the remains of a hearth which had once been used to lend warmth in the chilly environment. They say it's one of the earliest known human settlements in North America. It's about 3 times older than the Great Pyramids in Giza. The hearth wasn't the only thing they found, though. They also uncovered artifacts such as fish hooks, a wooden projectile launcher, and a small collection of stone tools. Alicia Gavro from the University of Victoria said people were sitting by the fireside here making tools, showing the site wasn't just occupied by nomads. This was a permanent settlement where people crafted and fished. How is this changing history? It's because until recently, scientists assumed humans migrated across a land bridge that used to connect Siberia to Alaska, but that was 13,000 or more years ago. Researchers are starting to realize that the route didn't have enough resources for migrants to survive. Instead, people may have come to North America by boat and landed on the coast. This discovery strengthens that theory. In the coming years, we could learn that the bridge between Siberia and Alaska wasn't nearly as important as previously believed. The earliest North Americans may have been seafarers, not bridge crossers. Scotland's sacred past. Something fantastic happened on the Scottish island of Orkney 7,300 years ago. A group of brave adventurers got into small wooden boats and sailed from mainland Scotland to the remote island. Once there, they began to build some of the earliest stone circles in the world. They dug passage tubes, conical towers, and stone ritual circles. Much of the ancient architecture of Scotland has more in common with ancient architecture from the Mediterranean than with places like England just to the south. When early Scandinavian settlers also found their way to Orkney, they were curious about the strange people who lived there. The locals were physically and culturally different from others in the British Isles. The people of Orkney spoke their own unique language, wore white tunics, and had their own bizarre customs. Between their unusual stone monoliths and their foreign ways, the Scandinavians were fairly sure their ancestors had come from somewhere far away. It could be that the origin of Orkney's monument builders is not what we think. One of the most mysterious stone monuments in Neolithic Orkney is Stennis. Only 3 out of its original 11 monoliths are still standing. It's hard to even tell this was once a grand landscape, but it was, and researchers are still struggling to figure out what it was used for. Some have suggested the monoliths at Stennis were arranged in such a way to form an open-air temple to the moon. These stone pillars were erected very similarly to enclosures at Stennis in Portugal. Then there's the Ring of Brodgar, which originally had 56 sandstone monoliths. Around the circle of stone was a deep ditch, though nobody knows what it was used for. There are a few other stone circles, and many of them have little or no information at all about their history. The debris does show that many were built prior to 3700 BC. Looking at the connection between the Scottish monoliths and similar stone features in Portugal, there could be a connection. Some have suggested the people who started building stone structures in Orkney 7,300 years ago were the same people building Neolithic monuments in Portugal, maybe even in other parts of Europe too. And now for number 8. But first, it's shout-out time! I wanted to give a big thank you to Eliarno2997 and Michael Kane 2080 for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about amazing discoveries. The Osiris figure. An archaeological excavation was recently carried out in a small Polish village. The researchers came across a seemingly unexplainable pair of artifacts. They found a bronze figurine depicting the ancient Egyptian god of fertility and agriculture, Osiris. Right next to it was a stone bust of Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. They were quoted as saying the artifacts are so unheard of in Poland that they have doubts about their authenticity. Why in the world was there a bust of a Roman god of pleasure right next to an ancient Egyptian figurine of the fertility god? It is a very strange discovery. The bust of Bacchus is even weirder because it looks very similar to other busts found in the ruins of Pompeii in the 18th century. These deities simply were not revered in Poland during ancient times. Could there have been a secret group nobody knew about worshipping foreign gods? It is possible, but unlikely. Historians think that instead of mysterious cults spreading worship of foreign gods into Northern Europe, the artifacts may have belonged to a prestigious family. Prior to the German invasion of Poland in World War II, the Klaniewski family lived in a beautiful palace near where the excavations were done. The diary of Maria Klanivska shows she was in Egypt in 1904, immersing herself in ancient culture. She could have purchased the Osiris figurines while in Egypt. The bust of the Roman god may have been another treasure brought back from Italy. When the Nazis came through in the 1930s, the family may have tried to safeguard their precious artifacts. That would explain why they were found buried in the dirt outside the village. Then again, the artifacts could be proof of how interconnected the ancient world really was. Even in Poland, the religions of exotic lands may have spread like wildfire. The unknown god. Different ancient religions around the world all had extremely similar gods. There was always a god of the sea, a god of war, a goddess of fertility, a goddess of love, etc. But in ancient Bulgaria, there was one god that doesn't exactly fit with the others. Recent archaeological discoveries at an abandoned cult site have found evidence of a previously unidentified salt god. In the ancient world, salt was one of the most valuable commodities. Roman soldiers would often be paid with salt rather than money. Those who earned salt every month instead of cash earned what was called a salarium, which translates to English from Latin as celery. The ancient salt mines at Provadia Solnitsata are regarded as the first functioning mint in Europe. It's here where people mined salt, then shipped it around the world as one of the first great global commodities. The ancient mines are located in northeastern Bulgaria. Near the mines is an ancient fortified citadel. Within the citadel is a ritualistic pit, most likely used for ceremonial slaughter. There is also an extensive cemetery. All these features date back to around 5500 BC. The Bulgarian Academy of Sciences says it was only in the last 3 decades that the local history started to be revealed, and it was only in the last year or two that researchers started to seriously explore the ruins around the ancient salt mine. They unearthed things like human skulls and the bones of children, and the salt god idol. The idol is a small artifact with an unusual face. It looks mostly human but has tinges of otherworldliness to it. It has ears and eyes but no mouth, with painted eyebrows. There are also 2 holes in the artifact which were likely used to hang it from a door. Scientists think this is the salt god, a nameless deity worshipped by those who toiled in the salt mines. The discovery is amazing because it goes to show just how much we still don't know about ancient history. Just when you think all the gods are out in the open, there are new cults and new deities to be uncovered. The pyramid documents. Pierre Tellet made an amazing discovery about a decade ago. He followed notes written in the 19th century by an English traveler. The notes sent him to a limestone cliff with over 24 caves, undisturbed and hidden from view in a remote part of the Egyptian desert. The caves are far from any modern city, way out in the middle of nowhere. Pierre first started excavating the caves in 2011. He soon realized they had served as some kind of storage depot. 4,600 years ago, the Egyptians were using the honeycomb system of caves as storage lockers, mostly for keeping things like boat parts and other construction materials. But in 2013, Pierre found something totally unexpected. He came across rolls of papyrus written in hieroglyphics. It soon became one of the biggest discoveries in Egyptology. These are the oldest known papyri anywhere on the planet. The ancient scrolls were written by men who built the Great Pyramid of Khufu. The very same men who stacked blocks to make the pyramid wrote these papyri. The discovery changed history in a major way. Finally, there was written evidence of the legendary builders. Among the ancient scripts was a journal of a man named Merer. He wrote everything his crew did for the day. It's boring stuff, but extremely insightful. Merer wrote about how his workers delivered goods and picked up materials. They filled their boats with stone and transported the stone to the pyramids as they were under construction. The papyrus should dismiss any notions about extraterrestrial assistance in building the pyramids. These words give a snapshot of the ancients going about their work to build the monument. They were paid laborers. They got the stone from a quarry and transported it by boat to the pyramid. It really was, if the text is to be believed, that easy. Ancient cross in the Andes. At the Miraflores archaeological site on Peru's central coast, experts discovered a temple complex almost 4,000 years old. Within the complex, they identified what might be the oldest cross in South America carved in stone. The complex is located about 60 miles from Lima, surrounded on all sides by vast farmland. Most of it is buried under tons of rock. The temple compound, although ruined and buried, is still enormous. It covers 70 hectares of land, dotted with broken pyramid structures and shattered plazas. Archaeologists led by Dr. Peter van Dalen Luna from the National University of San Marcos believe these structures were built during Peru's formative period. That was between 1800 and 900 BC. If it wasn't the largest temple complex on the coast, it was definitely one of them. Researchers say they have found plenty of signs of ritual activity. But the most exciting discovery of all was the cross. During excavations of a seemingly ordinary adobe wall, archaeologists came across a frieze. Upon the frieze is a carving of an Andean cross, also called a chacana. This is a wildly mysterious symbol that's been found across most Andean societies. The cross was carved or painted in structures all over Peru. It was used by extremely early societies 2,500 years before today, and it was used by the Inca 5 centuries ago when the Spanish showed up. This particular example of a chacana is believed to be the oldest. But what in the world does it mean? That's a question nobody seems able to answer. The chacana was as important to the ancient people of Peru as the cross is to Christians of the world. It's also a little strange that the two symbols look very similar, both incorporating a cross. The religious compound at Miraflores was abandoned for unknown reasons over 2,000 years ago. Even so, the symbol spread across the lands and was adopted by just about every single culture in the Andes. The voyage of Abu Bakr II. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa was the ruler of the Mali Empire in Africa. While on a visit to Cairo, he told an official, a man who had become his friend, a very odd story. Mansa Musa said he came into power only because his predecessor crossed the Atlantic Ocean with a monumental fleet and never returned. The account was recorded by al-Umari, an Arab historian. Ever since, the voyage of Mansa Musa's predecessor has been a thing of speculation. It could be that over 700 years ago, the king of the Mali Empire landed in America. It could even be possible that the emperor established his own Mali kingdom on the other side of the world. The identity of the traveler is heavily debated. Most historians agree it was most likely Abu Bakr II, though it could have been Muhammad ibn Ku. Mansa Musa was the first great king of Mali. He was the one who really propelled the empire into a state of economic prosperity and political influence. Historical evidence proves Mansa Musa was in Cairo for 3 months in 1324, completing the Hajj. He befriended an Egyptian governor named Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Amir Hajib. All of the easy parts of the story are easy enough to prove. It's the voyage that lacks all evidence. Mansa Musa claimed his predecessor sent 200 ships in search of new land. One ship came back, describing a mysterious place that they reached on the other side of the ocean. The emperor, presumably Abu Bakr II, was so excited that he ordered 2,000 ships to travel to the new lands immediately. He placed Mansa Musa in charge while he was gone and departed with a great fleet. But when he didn't come back after many years, Mansa Musa was made the official king by default. Where do you think Abu Bakr II and his 2,000 ships landed? And why did they never return to Africa? Did they find America first, or were they all lost at sea? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. The Plague of Civilization. In the year 541 AD, Emperor Justinian I of the Eastern Roman Empire had just finished campaigning against the Goths and Vandals. Rome had fallen, but Constantinople was on the rise. The empire was expanding and prospering. Everything was going great until a mysterious sickness stretched across Justinian's new land. It flowed into his capital and wreaked devastation on his people. Citizens reported suffering from a high fever and delirium, and then they died. Ancient historian Procopius wrote that as many as 10,000 people a day were falling dead in the streets of Constantinople. Even though the emperor survived, the empire itself was left in turmoil. He lost grip on many territories, which fell into chaos because of the high death toll. In modern times, scientists have still struggled to understand what caused the Justinian Plague. Some said it was a wave of influenza like the Spanish flu. Others thought it was the exact same thing as the Black Death that would show up again in a few centuries. Researchers finally got their answers when they started analyzing teeth from corpses who died around the year 541. They identified the same bacterium that causes the Black Death, Yersinia pestis. This means there were two cases of the plague spreading across Europe. The first was in the Dark Ages, the second was in the Middle Ages. The DNA analysis of the ancient teeth revealed something else that changed history. The plague did not originate in Europe as everyone thought. It had come from China, spreading across the Eurasian steppes and landing in Europe. Alexander Herbig from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History says the disease evolved a lot before it arrived in Europe, almost like it was preparing for an invasion. Even more shocking is that scientists identified a third pandemic caused by the same plague bacterium. It happened in the Neolithic Age, somewhere around 4000 BC. It too spread out of Asia and ravaged early European farmers. It likely entered Europe through Ukraine and caused a brief wave of unprecedented death in early communities. All three times the plague tried to wipe out Europe, it seems to have originated in the Far East. Ancient dwarfs. Norse mythology is practically bursting with dwarves. In fact, scholars think the myth of subterranean dwarfs may have started in Scandinavia prior to the Viking Age. The myths were so popular that the stories of a secret underground world populated by tiny people spread into nearby regions. That's why dwarves are so popular in Polish lore and in Slavic legends. The stories of dwarves would eventually reach Greece and spread across the Aegean into Egypt. Egypt even had their own dwarf god, Bes, frequently depicted as a bearded small person. The Egyptians used to say it was the dwarves who first taught magic to the ignorant humans. One of the weirdest legends comes from Hawaii. A group of tiny humans known as the Menehune supposedly lived on the island before settlers from Polynesia arrived. But as more and more foreigners came to the island, the Menehune were pushed into extinction. It sounds like a ridiculous story, except that there is physical evidence the dwarfs existed. There isn't a lot of evidence, but a little bit. The Kikiaola ditch at Waimea is all that remains of an irrigation ditch made from over 120 solid blocks. It's only 200 feet long because the rest of it is gone. This is an ancient piece of technology that could date back thousands of years to before the Polynesians arrived. But now it's nothing. A few rows of blocks ignored by scientists, hanging around the fire. In Spain, archaeologists discovered evidence of ancient human ancestors sitting around the fire 250,000 years ago. It wasn't the oldest fire ever used. Evidence has been found of human ancestors cooking with fire in Africa 1.5 million years ago. The earliest controlled fire in Europe was probably 400,000 years ago. But this wasn't just a cook fire, it was people hanging out at the fire. Just like you might hang out in the backyard and roast some hot dogs with your friends, that was what prehistoric people may have been doing as well. Experts describe them as fire pits, most likely used in community functions, for both food and fun. This is a big deal for anthropologists. It pushes back the accepted date of fire for socializing by 50,000 years. There is no evidence that people were sitting in primitive lawn chairs or roasting woolly mammoth hot dogs. But it is evidence of complex social behavior at a time when Homo sapiens had just evolved. It may not have even been Homo sapiens at the Valdocarros II site east of Madrid. It could have been Neanderthals or Homo heidelbergensis. How did the scientists reach these conclusions? They looked in the ancient fire pit for leftovers. They found traces of animal fats and plants. The charred material shows the fire burned at a temperature of up to 660 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the optimal heat for cooking something over an open flame. But how did they know the ancient humans were hanging out and not just cooking? Scientists say the only possible way to construct a controlled cook fire was with an established social structure. They would have needed language, even if it was primitive, to build their pyres. What this suggests is bigger than anything. It means before humans evolved, there were intelligent, human-like species who could talk, hunt, and organize. What do you think people talked about while they sat around the campfire 250,000 years ago? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and come back soon for more amazing videos. See you later. Bye!